Tyler, are we ready to begin?
I think so, whenever you are.
Okay. Welcome to the March 4th Plan and Zoning Commission meeting. I'll now read the rules and procedures. The Plan and Zoning Commission is generally an advisory body to the City Council. The City Council will hold a public hearing and make the final decision on all matters before the Commission other than site plans and subdivision plats, unless denials or conditional approvals thereof are appealed. Please contact the City Clerk or Community Development Department staff at 515-689-9485 for details on council hearings. Applicants will be given 10 minutes to present the request. If applicants wish to share materials not already submitted with the application, please email them to planning@dmgov.org so a staff host may be able to share them on the screen when you present. Proponents and then opponents from the public are then allowed to speak in that order, with each speaker allowed a maximum of 5 minutes. Staff has attempted to compile a list of people who would like to speak on each item. Staff will first call on these people and then will open it up to anyone else who wishes to speak. To request to speak during the hearing, please use the raise hand function on Zoom webinar via internet or dial *9 on your phone. Once permission to speak is given, to unmute and mute, dial *6 on your phone. You will be required to give your name and address for the record prior to speaking. Also, we ask that you keep your microphones and phones on mute unless you've been given the chance to address the commission by the chair. Applicant is then allowed 5 minutes for a rebuttal if any opponent spoke. All comments are to be germane to the item under consideration, and speakers are to maintain a courteous manner. The hearing will then be closed and the commission will discuss and vote on the issue. Items listed on the consent portion of the agenda will not be individually discussed and will be considered for approval in accordance with the recommendation in the staff report, unless an individual present or a member of the commission requests that the item be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately under the public hearing agenda. The City of Des Moines is pleased to provide accommodations to individuals or groups with disabilities and encourages participation in city government. Please know that typical accommodations may be limited by emergency requirements as issued by the state of Iowa and the City of Des Moines. Now we're ready for roll call.
All right. Abby Chungus.
Here.
Rocky Spazzato.
Here.
Will Page. Will Page.
Here.
Thank you. Johnny Alcivar.
Here.
Dory Briles.
Present.
Jan Freed.
Here.
Kayla Berkson.
Here.
Steve Wallace. Oh, sorry, he said he's not going to be with us tonight. Carolyn Jennison.
Here.
Francis Bogus.
Here.
Greg Jones.
Here.
All right. And Lisa said she was going to be a little late. And Emily, Steve, and Gray Wattier are not going to be with us tonight. So we do have quorum.
Thank you, Tyler. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from the February 18th meeting?
Dory, this is Carolyn. I'll make a motion.
Thank you.
All right. Rocky Spazzato.
Yes.
Will Page.
Yes.
Johnny Alcivar.
Yes.
Jan Freed.
Yes.
Dory Briles.
Yes.
Kayla Berkson.
Yes.
Carolyn Jennison.
Yes.
Francis Bogus.
Yes.
Abby Chungus.
Yes.
Greg Jones.
Yes.
That motion carries 10-0.
Thank you, Tyler. Now we're ready for the consent public hearing items. Item number 1, determination as to whether the proposed Hilltop Urban Renewal Plan is in conformance with the Plan DSM Creating Our Tomorrow Plan for property located in the 3,500 to 3,600 block of the north side of Hubble Avenue at the intersection of East Douglas Avenue and Kennedy Drive. Is there anyone on the meeting tonight who would like to pull this item and have it heard? If not, are there any commissioners who would like to hear this item? Okay, then item number 1 will stay on the consent agenda. Item number 2 is a request from Urban Campus Apartments, LLLP, represented by Jack Hatch, for vacation of the air and subsurface rights within the west 3 feet of 6th Avenue, adjoining the property located at 1230 6th Avenue, to allow for encroachment of building footings and building overhangs. Is there anyone present who would like to have this pulled and discussed in the public hearing? If not, anyone on the commission? Okay, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Dory, this is Jan. I'll move.
Thank you, Jan.
All right, Abby Chungus,
Yes.
Rocky Sposato,
Yes.
Will Page,
Yes.
Johnny Alcivar,
Yes.
Dory Briles,
Yes.
Jan Freed,
Yes.
Kayla Berkson,
Yes.
Carolyn Jennison,
Yes.
Francis Bogus,
Yes.
and Greg Jones.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion to approve consent items 1 and 2 passes 10-0.
Thank you, Tyler. We're now ready for the public hearing. Item number 3, request from Mundo Pequeñito, LLC, represented by Guadalupe Castillo, for review and approval of a public hearing site plan, Mundo Pequeño Childcare, for the property located at 1922 Southwest 1st Street. And I believe Bert is presenting tonight.
Yes, Madam Chair, members of the Commission, Bert Drost, planner for the City of Des Moines. The site plan before you is requesting 4 Type 2 design alternatives. The first 2 are for a parking lot and a trash enclosure within the front yard area. The third is for a waiver of public sidewalk along Columbus Avenue, and the fourth is for a waiver of the requirement for undergrounding utilities. The subject property is located on the north side of Indianola Road at the intersection with Southwest 1st Street, so right across the street from St. Anthony's. If the site looks familiar, it's because they rezoned it recently from NX2 to RX1, and then they also vacated a strip of right-of-way along Southwest 1st Street, so they had more room for their off-street parking lot. So here is the site plan that's being proposed. North would be to your right over here. So again, the 4 the Type 2 design alternatives that are requested are 1, to have the parking within the front yard area. And given the placement of the existing building, it's kind of a no-brainer. There really aren't any other places on the property that aren't between the building and the front property line. So staff has recommended approval. The second would be to allow a trash enclosure in this location right here at the southeast corner of the parking lot. Again, same deal. There really isn't any location on the property to put a trash enclosure. So while it's not an ideal location, we really do feel that there's a practical difficulty or a hardship in locating it anywhere else. So we feel that given the design and the landscaping that they're proposing around it, that they have made the best of it. The third waiver is for waiver of the sidewalk along Columbus Avenue along the north property line. If you can see, they are adding sidewalk along Southwest First Street, and there's an existing sidewalk along Indianola Road. So they're really only asking for waiver of the sidewalk along Columbus Avenue to the north. And then the final design alternative being requested is for waiver of the requirement that they underground utilities. And as you'll see in the photos, there is an overhead wire connecting to the building, and it stretches all the way from the east side of Southwest First Street, and so it crosses the street and then crosses the parking lot to get to the building. And I'll be showing you the estimates from Mid-American later in my presentation. So here's the building as it would appear after they make their modifications. When I show you the site photo, you'll see that this really is a huge improvement. So here's the site photo taken last week before the snow melted, thankfully. But you can see that they are making some much needed facade improvements and improving this parking lot in front of their building. And you can also see here that aerial overhead line that comes from the east side of Southwest First Street to a pole here and then connects to the building. And here is another angle of that overhead line. And then this is taken further north on Southwest First Street. So you can see that there are quite a few aerial lines in this area. And this is taking another step north. And this is looking to the west from Southwest First Street. So this is Columbus Avenue, where they're asking for waiver of the sidewalk requirement. And there's also overhead utilities here, but I have a letter from Mid-American that I'll show you as well that says there's really no way that they could bury that overhead line. And then this is looking this is looking east now down Columbus Avenue towards the site. So the blue building here is the subject property. So here's the estimate from Mid-American Energy. The quote was for $21,441. And again, that's just to add that service line that connects to the front of the building. And here's the sketch that Mid-American proposed or provided. So burying this line here across Southwest First Street and then across the parking lot, that was the $21,000 cost. And as they mentioned here, that there's no good options to convert that line along the north property line to an underground location, given the transformer and a few other reasons. So, and this is just confirmation from Mid-American saying that the estimate does not include burying lines along Columbus Avenue. So we asked the applicant for their total project budget, and they came back saying that the project is going to cost $40,560 plus another $10,000 for the sidewalk along Southwest First Street. So their overall investment is over $50,000. And so we'll get to in the staff rationale, we felt that given the cost of burying that service line of $21,000 plus another $7,500 estimate that it would cost to make the modifications inside the building by an electrician. So they were looking at over $28,000 for burying the utilities, that we felt that they did meet the criteria for waiving the undergrounding requirement. We didn't think it was reasonably practicable in this situation. So in our staff recommendation, again, I talked about the costs and how the $28,941 expense for undergrounding, that would represent a 57% of the project's $50,000 budget. We also noticed or put in the staff rationale that, given this property's location in an area that already includes a significant number of overhead utilities, that burying that single line really would not have a significant impact And we also felt that since this site's not on a major corridor, we also took that into consideration in making our recommendation to waive the undergrounding of that utility. So again, our recommendation, we recommended approval of Part A and Part B to allow the parking and trash enclosures in the front yard, just because there really is no other option. Part C, we did recommend denial of the waiver of public sidewalk along Columbus Avenue. Again, that's that shorter segment of property at the north end of the site. And then Part D, we recommended approval of that waiver as it was not reasonably practicable to require that all electrical, telephone, and cable transmission systems be placed underground. We did not get any comment cards back. So that concludes my presentation. Does anybody have any questions for me?
Bert, Greg Jones here.
Yeah.
Do you have aerial of sidewalks in the neighborhood on Columbus?
Yeah, so glad you brought that up. There are sidewalks along Indianola to the south and along the east side of Southwest First in this area. There aren't any other sidewalks to the west from Southwest First Street around the corner to Southwest Second at all. So the applicant is proposing to add the sidewalk here to get the sidewalk from Indianola to Columbus Avenue, but they didn't see the purpose of adding this segment here when it's not going anywhere. But to answer your question, there aren't any sidewalks in this area to the west that it would connect to at this time.
This is Johnny Alcivar. Are there any city plans for Columbus Avenue or for that stretch, as far as you know, from a traffic perspective to improve that? Is there a plan for a sidewalk or?
Not at this time. This is in the city's Two Rivers district, where we've had developers express interest in constructing multifamily in this area. So as the sites redevelop in this area, we do believe that there will eventually be some sidewalks. If you remember, a few years ago, there was a proposal, I think it was along Edison Avenue here, for a multifamily project that didn't pan out. But I think over time, we will start to see redevelopment here that will include sidewalks.
If there are no other questions from the commissioner, do we have the applicant to speak this evening?
Looks like Alan Van Gundy is here.
Yes, thank you. Alan Van Gundy with Simonson and Associates Architects, 1717 Ingersoll Avenue. Again, thank you for the opportunity this evening to present this project, and thank you, Bert, for that comprehensive introduction. You have covered things very well, so I apologize if I repeat some things, but there are a couple points that I'd like to emphasize for the commission. We are in agreement with staff's report, obviously, with the exception of the Part C recommendation for the Columbus Street sidewalk, so I'll try to focus on that. I think the question for the commission tonight is really, when is the burden of the code too much to impose upon a small business owner in the city of Des Moines? Just a little bit of background on the property. This has been a daycare for years and years. I don't have an exact date, but I believe it's in excess of 20 years. The current owner purchased the property about 3 years ago after operating a daycare in her home for a number of years and deciding that it was time to branch out and go into purchase of a center. Her intent was to expand the business and improve the property as her time and resources allowed. So she approached Simonson in June of last year with the request to basically pretty simple request. She wanted to put a shed on the property to store toys. She wanted to move the front door to create a little bit nicer entrance into the facility. improve the facade, basically new siding, and then replace the existing pavement in front of the building, which was in poor condition. So that obviously kind of kicked off this kind of domino effect of processes that have needed to happen since that time. As Bert mentioned, we had a pre-app and found out that we were a non-conforming use in the zoning district. So we were requested to go ahead and rezone the property, which we did. That was time and some money for the owner. And then as we kind of dug into the site plan, we realized that to create any kind of a parking lot in front of the building to replace what's there, we just didn't have the dimension in front of the building between the street right away. So it was recommended that Southwest First Street had a little bit of extra right away. So we went through the vacation process, and the owner agreed to purchase the vacated right away from the city to allow the parking lot to be constructed to meet the required parking for the use and provide the setback requirements from the zoning ordinance. So again, that was more time and money, obviously, for the owner to purchase that right away. Then obviously we dug into the site plan. We recognized that, much of the landscaping, the trash enclosure, a lot of that is kind of standard site planning stuff. We've agreed to do those improvements, even though they really weren't part of what the owner originally sought to do to improve her business, but we're going ahead and doing that. And then obviously the two issues that Bert spent the most time on there, the sidewalk and the bearing of the power, were bigger surprises to the owner of the property. We appreciate staff's agreement that bearing the power is not practical and unreasonable for this property owner. So we appreciate that recommendation. For the sidewalk, we can see value in adding the sidewalk on Southwest First Street. The owner has agreed to go ahead and put that in. However, we see no value in the sidewalk on Columbus. As Bert outlined, there's no sidewalks on either side of Columbus or 2nd Street further to the west. So we would still request that the commission considers that waiver request to not put in that sidewalk. We believe that we have exceeded what is reasonable for a small business with the scope of the improvements that were originally proposed. Relatively small project. And for a small business owner, it's significant investment, and all these other things that get tacked on and the processes, it becomes overwhelming for a small business owner. So we request your consideration this evening, and I'm happy to answer any additional questions. Thank you.
This is Will Page. I have one question, please. On the aerial I'm looking at in our packet, there's a house that looks as if it faces Indianola Road. Is that correct? And if so, is there a front entrance to that building from Indianola Road with a sidewalk leading up to it?
I can't tell from the aerial. I'm going to pull up the assessor record for 115.
I think if you zoom in, you can see a narrow path. This is Jason Van Essen with the planning staff. I think, Bert, if you just zoom in, you might find your answer.
Yeah, on the assessor's webpage, it is a single family house or maybe a duplex that is oriented towards Indianola Road with the front door facing Indianola. And there's actually an attached garage behind the bushes.
So that's a pedestrian entrance to the house from Indianola Road. That's the answer to my question. Thanks, Bert and Jason.
Yeah, but the sidewalk that would be waived would be up here to the north.
Yeah, I know that. That's why I was asking that this house has a sidewalk already in front of it.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions?
Yeah, this is Abby Chunguth. I have a question about the plans that we were given that show the north section of the property where a sidewalk would go. There are trees, and I guess there are trees indicated that they will be planted along that side of the property next to Columbus Avenue. And my question is whether or not there would then remain space to put a sidewalk either now or in the future, or if the trees would then obstruct that.
This is Alan Simonsons. Those are street trees that are required as of the site planning process. We'll be putting them in. Obviously, the location is slightly flexible depending on what needs to happen there. There is overhead power, so I think they need to be understory trees. And I think the plan would be to go ahead and plant those between where the sidewalk would be located and the back of curbs, such that if in the future the sidewalk was required, it would go in behind the trees.
Okay, thank you.
If there are no more questions, do we have anyone else who wishes to speak in favor of the request?
I am not seeing any hands.
Okay. Do we have anybody in the audience who wishes to speak in opposition to the request?
There is one hand now for De Lupita. They've unmuted themselves, so now they can speak. And they might be in support. I might have missed it.
Okay, thank you.
So,
Hello?
hello?
Yes, hi, this is Guadalupe Castillo, the owner of the building. Thank you, everybody, for hear the project. Thank you, Alan, for the presentation. Thank you for the commission to hear that. So I'm just want to say that I'm here and I hear everything. So, and well, I'm just want to let you know that this is the third year in this building. I've been working in my home for 14 years, and this is all the stuff is new for me, and I'm just need some help from you guys because I need the neighborhood. I want the neighborhood looks better, and also I want to give better services to my clients and also the community. So, yeah, I think that's all I want to say, and thank you for hearing that.
Thank you for sharing your enthusiasm.
Yeah, I'm so excited to doing this. I love my job and also be here in the city of Des Moines. So
that's wonderful. So do we have anybody else who wishes to speak in support or opposition to the project? If not, are there any other questions for Bert at this time? If not, we will close the public hearing for commission's deliberation.
Dory, this is Rocky.
Hi, Rocky.
I'll move staff.
Any discussion on staff?
Rocky, this is Greg Jones. So that means you would like them to put the sidewalk along Columbus Avenue?
No.
Because staff is recommending denial of the waiver.
Yeah, that is correct. I appreciate that, Greg. I'm in opposition of C.
So you would like to change C to approval of the requested waiver?
Yes, sir. Thank you. That is correct.
Thank you.
Thanks for getting that clarified, Greg. Any other discussion? If not, we'll move to the vote.
Okay, Will Page?
Yes.
Johnny Elsevar?
Yes.
Dory Briles?
Yes.
Jan Freed?
Yes.
Kayla Berkson?
Yes.
Lisa Howard?
Yes.
Carolyn Jennison?
Yes.
Francis Bogus?
Yes.
Greg Jones?
Yes.
Abby Chungith,
Yes.
and Rocky Spizzato.
Yes.
That motion carries 11-0.
Madam Chair, I didn't know if you wanted to read the item first or wanted me to get into it.
I'm sorry, I was on mute. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Request from ITS Inc., represented by Amanda Holmgard, for review and approval of a public hearing site plan, ITS Shazam, for property located at 6109 Willamere Drive. Thank you, Eric.
Thank you. This is Eric Lundy, Senior City Planner. There's 4 waivers requested here. I'll go over those quickly. The first is to allow a loading entrance location on a front facade. We're only permitted on side and rear facades. In this instance, there's an existing one where they're reconstructing it and keeping it oriented on the front facade of that addition at the loading dock. Part B, waiver of the fence frontage buffer, and when we get into the photos, I'll mention more specifically where that would be located. Part C, waiver of interior lot landscape islands, and it's not that they're asking for complete waiver, they're just asking to have fewer than they would be required under this provision. And then Part D, waiver of the required landscape requirements for refuse and recycling areas. Again, they are not proposing zero conformance with this, but they do want to waive it on one side of the enclosure. The subject property is at Willamere Drive and Southwest 61st Street. It's actually comprised of a couple parcels, actually 3 parcels. And so these 2 are work in common, as these 2 larger generally comprise the site. It already has interior landscaping and parking, but they want to reconfigure it. The public streets come in, so it comes in an angle and access comes through right at this corner. If you have any questions on the overall site plan that was in your packet, let me know. I'm gonna scroll right to the landscape page. This shows what changes are being made. So over here on the west is the loading dock. In Part A, they're actually enlarging that a little bit by a slightly larger footprint than the one that will be removed for this project. They are changing the configuration of an area that's a loading area currently and adding parking. So this is getting changed to have another drive aisle and loading parking spaces off of this, coming off of this drive entrance off of Willamere. You can see the street trees, overstory trees proposed throughout the area in the islands. There are some islands where they're not proposed. In a couple of instances, that's where there's existing light poles for the parking. This is the fence frontage buffer area. Right now, there's some robust street trees. Initially, the staff had denied the request to waive the fence frontage buffer as a type 1, and that put it on this agenda. After reviewing it a little further, I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. They are adding sidewalk to this project along the street side in order to preserve these existing trees, and you'll see them in the photos too. They are kind of meandering the sidewalk around, which puts it in the area that would typically have the fence frontage buffer area. They're making some slight modifications kind of in that interior facade that was where the loading area was. That's now going to be a patio and no longer will be kind of a loading function, as the entire project is a renovation of this building for office function. This is a focus on this loading dock that's on the west. This is the south facing facade, and they're tying it into the building with the materials. But the function of it really has to still come off of Willamere unless they would acquire or tie in with property to the west. Right now, staff is comfortable with Part A, which is allowing that loading dock to face towards Willamere to the south on the south facade of that loading dock addition. We're also comfortable with Part B to waive the fence frontage buffer in order to get the sidewalk and preserve existing street trees. However, we are recommending denial of the total number of interior islands being waived to be reduced, and waiver of the required requirements for the refuse and recycling. And I'm going to go back. I forgot to go to the refuse and recycling would be clear at the north end. They're proposing shrubs around the west and the north, and there's one overstory tree planting required with that. In order to preserve a parking space on this side, they are not proposing any landscaping on that, and it's the requirement is to be surrounded on the three sides by the landscaping. So it's essentially waiver of a overstory tree and shrubs. Well, not even an overstory tree, just shrubs, which are going to cause the loss of a parking space. And one of their primary motivations here is their preservation of as many spaces as they can get, because they're introducing more employees to this building. And their concern is that they won't have enough for visitors and employees at peak times of the workday. So that's how they've expressed in their narrative that they submitted with their application. And I'm sure they'll get into that more when they make their arguments. There was no communications received, and I should remind the commission that on site plans and plats, we don't send out response cards until somebody would contact us and request to see the documents, and then we would provide them with a card if they wanted to, or just invite them to make a written communication. So there's a lot of times when site plans would not have cards. And I just realized that I must have either I skipped the photos or they didn't get inserted properly when I made this. So I can, if you need to see photos, I can back out of this and open photos if you want me to go through those. I think I will do that just to.
Dory, while Eric is loading those photos, you probably could go ahead and see if anybody has questions for staff, just to help with time.
Commissioners, do you have any questions for Eric at this time? I think for me, seeing the photos will help understand the refuse enclosure and the pedestrian entrance, perhaps.
Yes, and I do have a close-up of that area so you can see it better too. Can everybody see this now?
Yes, I can see it.
So this is where the street intersection is, and you can see the north drive going to the existing loading area, and then there's another driveway to the west that also bounds with the other site to the south. This is panning across the existing parking lot. This is looking to the left. You can see those mature trees along Willamere that in the end, I think we decided it was better to preserve those than to and route the sidewalk around it and not require the fence frontage buffer. This is looking at the area that would be that internal loading area converted to more of a patio and other parking. This is looking at the area where the enclosure would go. So you can see some residential to the north in that River Oaks Center development, but there is heavy trees there. That's there. They've already started removing some of the old dock. They're going to have an enclosure there with a loading door that would face the street. This is looking back across Willamere. And then I have some other images that were provided by the applicant that they'll want to access. So I do have those in this presentation, and they can just tell me to change the slide when they want to refer to them.
Well, if any questions for Eric? If not, we could hear from the applicant.
Rick Baumhover's raised his hand.
Rick,
hello.
Hello. Please go ahead.
This is Rick with. Yes, I'm Rick Baumhover with Bishop Engineering, and Eric, if you could go to that first slide of our exhibits, I think I'll just probably start there.
Okay, give your address while I'm doing that.
Oh, sure. 3501 104th Street in Urbandale. With me tonight also are Amanda Holmgard and Gary Chris and Dan Kramer with ITS Shazam, and Diane Ladd also with Simonson, who is the architect for the building renovations. I won't speak too much about the building renovations. Well, first of all, let me say that Eric did a fine job running through and explaining the project. We appreciate the staff's approval of or recommendation of A and B. Items C and D, I think, simply boiled down to weighing the need of a parking space versus a landscape island, and we can get into that more of that discussion later. First, I'll touch briefly on the first two items. The loading dock on the west side of the building was kind of a catch-22 in that that's where the dock is currently and it faces the street. The other alternative would have been to not have it face the street. It would have to practically face to the east. However, it would have to then be on the south side of the building, and the whole dock operation would move much closer to the street, and the trucks would be along the street. And we and staff both thought that that was a worse scenario than leaving the dock where it's at. As you saw in the elevations, that will be enclosed, and it'll just have a dock, overhead door there. So it'll be really cleaned up from what it is today as well. The second item is concerning the fence buffer along the south side. We thought that it made more sense to add the sidewalk in there. To get the sidewalk was more important than the complete fence buffer, which would have disturbed the trees, and we're tight on space there. So we appreciate that staff acknowledged that we kind of tried to do the best that we could there. The other two items come down to, as I said, it's parking. This facility right now employs 250 people. They're looking, part of the project is to take over warehouse space inside the building and to convert it to office space. They're hoping to add upwards of 50 more employees. They're looking to make this, more site amenities, if you will, where the docks are on the east side of the building now. That's going to be closed off and become a outdoor patio for employees to gather, have lunch as an amenity. And also with that, for the employees, they want to try to have parking for their employees so they're not walking blocks to get here. And so that got us to, and part of the project is to reconfigure their parking lot. So I get into that a little bit more, but this first drawing here, I'm trying to show that where the parking lot is located is really tucked away and hidden from a lot of the public view already. There's warehouse buildings to the south, their own building to the east, or excuse me, to the west. To the east is a large, I think that was the R. Donnelly or the printing building. To the east with trucks and truck docks there, 250 some feet away. And that also drops down vertically 18 feet as you go to the east. And then to the north, there are some heavy treed area. There's an old, you can kind of see the faint remnants of an old railroad switching yard there that drops down, but then it comes back up behind the apartments, and the rear parking area of those apartments is roughly 6 feet lower than the parking lot of the ITS Shazam site, if you could even see it through the trees. So kind of wanted to give an overall view here that this parking lot really isn't front and center to the traveling public. It's a very isolated and very hidden away. And where we propose to put the trash enclosure is about as far away from the public view as we can get it already. So we were cognizant of needing it to be hidden. And so we try to locate it in about as far away a place as we could. So now, Eric, if you could go to the next slide. So this is the current condition today, and with the number of islands that they have. As you can see, there's some long rows of parking. The old city requirement was 20 stalls in a row, and they have some areas where it's approaching 15, or I think on the very east side, there's maybe a row that's maybe a hair over that, like a 22 or so stalls without an island. But this is their configuration today. They have roughly 16 either end cap or mid-row islands. Eric, if you could go to the next slide. Okay, thank you. So this is our proposed, go back. There you go, thank you. So this is our proposed layout of the islands. We're going from 16 islands to 35. we think this is a reasonable compromise to add islands that would improve the appearance of the parking lot, but yet still balance the needs that the owner has for increasing parking. Right now, the picture you saw before showed, I think it was 208 parking stalls. They have 250 employees. This configuration gets them to 231 stalls. And we're still adding about 30, or what are we adding? We're adding about 18 additional landscape islands. And we're trying to put them where they need to be. They need to be at the end rows so that every end cap has islands, and also to break up the long rows in the middle of the lot. And also catch the, well, that's it. Yeah, catch the end cap and the long mid-island rows. So we think this is a reasonable compromise. It gets, some rows have, instead of having 8, they get upwards of having 10 or maybe 12 cars in a row before there's an island. But again, we think this is a reasonable compromise, kind of halfway between what we had before and what the full requirement would be. And Eric, if you could go to the next slide, that shows what the full build out would be. And as you can see, it gets fairly busy with a lot of islands, but that's what the way the existing parking lot is laid out too. It's not in easy increments of 8 stalls island, 8 stalls island. There's some rows that, as you can see, there's some islands that are only maybe 2 stalls apart, but we're retrofitting the number of stalls we had and trying to make it into these units of 8 stalls on an island, 8 stalls on an island. And it gets a little, there's a lot of rows that are definitely less than 8 with this configuration. The last item 4 in the packet was about landscaping around the trash enclosure. Again, the reason we don't want to put in and fully landscape that trash enclosure because we're trying to save parking stalls. And that seemed like a parking stall that, or it was easy to ask for in the sense that that trash enclosure is going to be landscaped on the west side, the north side already. It's already tucked back in the back of the building. The only visible side, it's going to have a masonry block wall on it. The only thing that's not going to happen is there's not going to be shrubs against the block for that trash enclosure. And the only people that are going to see that are the people that are parking in that row of stalls there. There are no public views from the east. As you can see, it goes off to the other warehouse and truck parking lot that's off to the east. So we think we've done what was as much as we could do. We could have asked for maybe even less landscaping there, but we're trying to be reasonable, put in as much landscaping as we think makes sense. But again, this is the owners desperately want to have as much parking as they can to provide for their employees, to attract employees and retain their employees. And so I guess I'll end my presentation with that and take any questions you may have of me right now. I know others from ITS Shazam may like to speak as well.
Madam Chair, this is Will Page. I have a question, please, of the applicant.
Go ahead, Will.
Rick, on item or part number D, the waiver of the required landscape requirements for refuge and recycling areas per et cetera. If we approve that, would that meet your requirements as far as the landscaping is concerned in those areas?
If you approve us not placing that island there?
Yes.
Yes, we would appreciate that because that would allow us to have one more parking space.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions at this time? If not, we can hear from anybody else who is in support of the project. Are there any others who wish to speak in support of this request?
Looks like we have a few hands raised.
We'll go ahead and allow Carol Maurer to unmute herself. If you want to go ahead, Carol. Carol, are you able to unmute yourself?
Star 6 is.
Sorry, operator error on this end. My bad. I was really good when no one heard me. My name again is Carol Maher, M-A-H-E-R, 701 Polk Boulevard in Des Moines. Thank you to the owners for working to improve your property, as well as not only retain your employees, but look to hire more. Yay. And I appreciate the fact that you're adding amenities for people to be outdoors more. But I did hear mentioned both by the applicant and staff about the need to have as much parking as possible. And I'm wondering if there would be an opportunity to encourage employees to get to their workplace by something other than a car. I didn't have an opportunity to ride by this site, but I believe it looks like it's not far from a part of the large bike trail network in our city that would be a great way for your employees to get to work, and perhaps encouraging them to ride their bike by offering bike infrastructure for them at work, perhaps like an indoor bike storage, showers, or changing areas, so that they can ride their bike and get there and be comfortable and appreciated and encouraged to do so, and sort of create sort of a bike culture at your place. That might be an opportunity that would then not need you to be as stressed about how many parking spaces you have. So that's just my comment. And again, thank you for your commitment to the city.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak in support of the project?
Allow Dan Kramer to unmute himself if you'd like to go ahead. Are you there, Dan?
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, just give us your name and address, please.
Hello?
We can hear you, Dan.
I'm sorry, can you hear me?
Dan, this is, I can hear you. Yes. Dan,
I'm going to go ahead and proceed. It sounds like you can hear me. So thank you very much to the commission and to the Madam Chairwoman for giving me the opportunity to speak. My name is Dan Kramer. I work for Shazam ITS Inc. My address is 2149 Northwest 135th Street in Clive, Iowa. I wanted to just provide some perspective tonight on the reasons why we're asking for the change, and hopefully you'll find them germane to the discussion. First, to answer the question that was brought up immediately before me, we do provide bike trail access to our employees. In addition to that, we do have a fitness facility here inside the building for them to be able to shower with lockers and to be able to change. So we do what we can to be able to encourage those folks to do that. In regards to kind of the requests that we're making, I'm hoping that you'll kind of understand a little bit more in terms of the reasons behind the request, and they're probably not what you might think they are. You probably know us by our brand name that you see on ATMs or maybe on your debit card as Shazam. Our building does say ITS Inc. on the front of it for a reason. That is one of the kind of sub companies below Shazam, but that's there for a reason. We're a secured facility. So if you actually kind of come back down Willamere Drive to the location that we're at, you'll actually see a whole host of kind of security measures to prevent unauthorized access into our building. Those loading docks, for example, yes, they are typically used for things that you would normally use a loading dock for in a building like ours, but we also use those loading docks to load and unload ATMs. And the reason we do that is because we do a lot of testing on security and protocols on those ATMs to make sure consumers are safe. But in addition to that, in the facility, the employees that are coming to work here every day, we are a 24/7 facility, are doing a lot of different things. But one of the primary functions that we have in this facility is operations. That operations includes customer service to merchants, retailers, as well as financial institutions, and sometimes consumers. But in addition to that, we're also providing services to credit unions and banks that includes the monitoring of fraud. The reason that that's important to this conversation is that there are a lot of folks, bad actors, that seek to gain access to the information that we have. There's a reason that we selected the site and the facility that we did here at the Willamere location. We actually house a data facility here. But unfortunately, we're kind of the victims of digital attacks every day into our systems. Where bad guys are trying to get to the account information of card holders, to the login credentials of consumers and of banks and credit union employees. And so we do an extensive amount of training of all of our employees as it relates to physical security of the building to prevent access, but also our folks are unfortunately targeted on a regular basis by folks that are trying to phish, if you've heard that term before, or get information from our employees. And so we'd like to have them as collectively together as possible, parking included when they come to our facilities, and to make sure that we're providing a safe and secure environment for them. So we look at things, I guess, a little bit differently when it comes to issues that we're faced with. Certainly we want to do what we can to be a good corporate citizen. We are projecting about a $7 to $8 million investment in this facility. Some of that includes dollars to harden it and make sure that it continues to meet the data security and physical security needs that we have as an organization. We're asking that you folks take that into consideration when you're looking at the things in front of you. And we hope that you will find some benefit in the fact that we are certainly willing to compromise on it. But we really are trying to do this for maybe different reasons than most. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in support of the request?
I don't see any other hands.
Okay. Then are there any others who in the audience who wish to speak in opposition to this request?
No hands again, Chair.
Okay, thank you. At this time, commissioners, do you have any further questions for city staff? If not, we will close the public hearing and for the commissioners' deliberation. Anyone care to make a motion or share their opinions at this time?
Dory, this is Greg Jones.
Hi, Greg.
I think, I won't make a recommendation yet, but I'll offer an opinion that I think they've demonstrated for Part C and Part D that they've tried pretty hard, that it's kind of far from the public view. And so I'd be in support of allowing those waivers for those two items.
Dory, this is Will Page here. To follow up on what Greg was saying, as I understood from Rick Baumhover, there's 16 islands there now, and as the compromise that the applicant has suggested would increase the number to 35 for a total of 231 stalls. If those numbers are correct, I'm in agreement with what Greg was suggesting.
Thank you, Will.
And this is GM Dory. I would agree with that. So
I agree with that also. Is there anyone who wish to make a motion at this time? Or any other comments?
I would move Part A and Part B as staff has suggested. With Part C, I would allow the number of islands as the applicant has suggested or recommended or agreed to. And I would delete the requirements for the landscape requirements for the refuge and recycling areas as stipulated in D.
Okay, thank you, Will. Is there any further discussion, commissioners, before a vote?
Madam Chair, this is Eric Lundy. Will, were you meaning not requiring any landscaping or as they had proposed it?
As they had proposed it in the compromise.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Well, if there's no further discussion, we'll prepare to take a vote.
Johnny Alcivar.
Yes.
Dory Briles.
Yes.
Jan Freed.
yes.
Kayla Berkson.
Yes.
Lisa Howard.
Yes.
Carolyn Jennison.
Yes.
Francis Bogus. Francis Bogus. Okay, we'll move on. Greg Jones.
Yes.
Abby Chungith.
Yes.
Rocky Spizzato.
Yes.
And Will Page.
Yes.
I don't see Francis on here, so he might have dropped off. So motion carries 10-0.
Thank you, Tyler. We're now ready for item number 5 on the agenda. It's a request from JR Partners, represented by Tim Ripma, for review and approval of a public hearing site plan at 401 East Court. And Jason, I believe, will be presenting.
Yes, Chair, members of the Commission, Jason Van Essen with the city's planning staff. This item, we do have 2 Type 2 requests. I'll show the map and drawings to get you familiar with the site, but Part A is pertaining to on-site or on-surface parking on-site. The downtown, our downtown building types only allow parking within buildings. So this is an existing site where a building is being remodeled, and there's a parking lot that's there today that's being reconditioned or restored or repaired, might be a good way to put it. And then Part B is a little bit similar to the last discussion item in that there's a landscape island that the applicant is requesting waiver of that as staff, we didn't come to agreement. I'll get a little more deeper into that as we get into the presentation. This is the subject property. It is on the southeast corner of East Court Avenue and East 4th Street, kind of the southern part of the East Village in the downtown area. Bird's eye view of the property. This is the building that's proposed for renovation. Parking lot we're discussing. me zoom out here. Just give me a second. Site plan sheets. These were included in the packet you received. I'm going to go ahead and get us to the landscaping sheet. You can see that they are providing landscaping around the perimeter. We do have some street trees. We've worked with them. There is a future city project on East 4th Street, and they're accomplishing what they can accomplish at this time, and that project will come in at a later date. 10 stalls against the building. Staff is supportive or has approved waiving that. Our standards are 8 stalls in a row. On the west side of the property, we have 14 stalls in a row. That's where we didn't feel like we saw enough evidence to support requesting waiver. I want to emphasize, not just for this project, but for the past one and other items that you'll see. Lots of times when when we're reviewing these, we may feel that there really needs to be more discussion, and that's where we believe the P&Z has a role to play. And so, needing type 2 relief isn't, that's not a bad thing. That's just a process. Sometimes we want to loop you guys in, and also often it provides the applicant with additional time to provide more information. And what we've seen to date on this one, we didn't have compelling evidence to support, in our mind, just waiving it without your input. And so we're bringing this to you. We were going to have to bring this item to you anyway because it's a redo of a surface parking lot. And so I just want to give a little context to that. Got a copy of the staff report. I just flipped through the elevations. We've already approved those from a standpoint that nothing needs any further relief. The staff reports always include the criteria that we use to review these design alternative requests. We've already gone into kind of our rationale for what our recommendations are. We're supporting Part A, and based off the information we have to date, we are recommending denial of Part B. This is the response map for the 250-foot notice area. I do have some slides that the applicant sent to us for when they present. I'll help them through that. But for now, I'm happy to take questions from the commission.
So Jason, with that row of 14, where would that island be recommended to be placed?
I would suggest somewhere in the middle. I can go back to that sheet. The site is accessed off the alley, so I think it might be a little tight to have it down this way. Certainly we could do that. I don't know that we have a strong opinion one way or the other. We're always flexible to work with the applicant. I think there's also, maybe this is a little more of a pinch point with their patio space. So my gut reaction was more in the middle of the site, but, certainly open to suggestions on that.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for Jason? If not, is the applicant ready to present?
Tim, go ahead and unmute yourself, and we'll go from there.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you so much. Chairwoman, members of the board, Tim Ritma, JR Partners. Office is located at 512.5 East Grand Avenue, Des Moines, Iowa. With me, we have Rachel Harris with LT Leon. She is a landscape architect working on this project with us, as well as Jeff Schaefer with BNIM Architecture. So what we are proposing on this property is this is an old A&P grocery store. We are working with the National Park Service and the State Historic Preservation Office to historically refurbish this property. It's roughly 9,000 feet, and we're going to convert it into 3 separate tenants. The front half will be Power Life Yoga. In the middle, there will be a 2,700 square foot office user. And then the far end, or the south, there'll be a 3,000 square foot restaurant and bar. What we are proposing, and go ahead and flip if you want to the site. Next slide. So again, here's kind of the existing condition. A couple facts that I'd like to point out. We feel we're meeting requirements just in kind of a different way. So currently, a couple facts, currently there is 0 green space on this site. We are adding over 2,100 square feet of green space to the site when we are done. The proposed opening site would be increased by 10%, meeting the city's requirement as well. The setbacks that we are proposing on Court Avenue is 7.5 feet, and then 9 feet 4 inches along East 4th. This exceeds the city's requirement of 7 feet. So we are adding a lot of green space in other spots. Currently, parking lot mature canopy covering will increase from 0 to 87%, which exceeds the city's requirement by 30%. Trees on the site will increase from 1 tree to 11, 7 of which of these are bordering along this East 4th Street. So again, we are kind of proposing we meet this green space requirement in an alternative way. If you'd like to flip to the next slide. Wanted to show you this as well. To give in context, neighborhood, Peachtree Brewery, which is across the street to the west, you can see they do not have islands in their parking lot. So we do feel like we're fitting into the neighborhood. Would you like to flip to the next slide, please? So here's kind of what we are proposing. So you can see we are adding extensive amount of green space. There are only 24 parking spots in this lot. So what we're really trying to accomplish is not congesting the street. I know we're talking 1 parking spot, but with a office or a fitness user that has AM and PM classes along with lunch, along with a restaurant that has lunch and dinner, along with an office user, and everything else that this neighborhood is evolving into. You can see there's not a lot of street parking spots along the street. So a lot of congestion. We're trying to keep it off the street. And again, not a lot of parking spots. So we are requesting for your consideration to approve our Part B. And I am happy to answer any additional questions you may have. I think there might be one more slide as well. Yeah, again, we're trying to mirror image what our neighbors did to the west. This is kind of an example we're working off of. And then again, here are some facts that I read off to you earlier, just so you can see them for yourself.
Thank you. If there are no questions at this time. Commissioners don't have any questions. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in support of this request?
Not seeing any raised hands, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak in opposition to the request?
No hands, Madam Chair.
Okay. Then, commissioners, do you have any questions for the staff this time? If not, we will close the public hearing and go into deliberation with commissioners.
Madam Chair, this is Rocky. I really believe that the applicant's request is very reasonable. I think we come out of this with more green space by allowing their request. And I would make a motion to support A and grant the waiver to B.
And this is Lisa Howard. I'm in agreement with Rocky.
Thank you both. Any other discussion before the vote?
Madam Chair, this is Johnny Alcivar. I am also in agreement with my peers. My only question is whether the this area, it's very bicycle oriented. So I do envision this as a potential mode of transportation for the uses that have been mentioned today. So I wonder if there's a possibility of adding additional bike racks, because I think just the two that are showing perhaps may not be enough for this particular part of town.
Go ahead and unmute yourself, Tim.
Hi, great question. Tim Ritma here with JR Partners. Part of this area is kind of evolving out of the Market District. So as you can see, there will be a future bike lane along East Court Avenue. East 4th is slated to be redeveloped by the city of Des Moines by 2025. So we're a little limited on what we can do at this time. We are working closely with the Market District developers along with the city of Des Moines. But this entire street along East 4th from East ML King all the way to East Court will be ripped up and redeveloped. So the efforts we're putting in now are going to be removed streetwise, not the landscaping, streetwise. So working with the city, we're a little limited on where we can, but we're very bike friendly, and where we could or can add bike routes, we're in support. There's also, I'll mention, everything has to be approved by the National Park Service and the State Historical Preservation Office, which makes things a little tricky with placing structures in front of the building.
Thank you. Are there any other discussion? If not, we'll have the vote.
All right, Dory Briles,
Yes.
Jan Freed,
Yes.
Kayla Bergson,
Abstain.
Lisa Howard,
Yes.
Carolyn Jennison,
Yes.
Francis Bogus,
Yes.
Greg Jones,
Yes.
Abby Chungith,
Yes.
Rocky Spozzato,
Yes.
Will Page,
Yes.
and Johnny Alcivar.
Yes.
That motion carries 10-0-1.
Thank you, Tyler. We're now ready for item number 6. It's a request from Justin Raymond, the owner, for review and approval of a public hearing site plan for property located at 4215 Southeast 17th Street to allow installation and construction of a manufactured home. And Jason's presenting this item.
Yes, Chair, members of the Commission, Jason Van Essen with the planning staff. Before I get into the detail of this particular case, I do want to just comment on sidewalks and the work that's gone into looking at some alternative ways to consider them as we've had some of these applications come before us. Since it reflects on all three of these items, our last three items, I think it makes sense for me to stop a little bit and let you guys know that staff has met with the city manager's office. We are working on a a deferment program. We have a couple of different avenues that we're considering kind of within that context that our legal department is going to flush out. So we're hoping to have something back to you, to the committee that the commission had, and also the commission as a collective soon. So just want to make sure that you understood that we are aware of that. We are making progress. I know that often when we have had these applications, you've asked that. And so I just wanted to offer it to you and kind of get it out of the way so we can focus on the merits of each individual case. In this case, we have a new house that is proposed. A lot of this relief pertains to that, also pertains to the garage requirement. And as I walk through, I'll just go ahead maybe and just quickly, Part A is minimum building width relief. Our house standards apply to all houses, whether they're stick built or manufactured housing. In this case, a manufactured house is proposed. It is proposed on the narrow, and so it needs relief of the minimum width for a building. That's A. B has to do with transparency. There is no windows proposed on the facade facing the street. The principal entrance would face sideways. So that's what C is about. D is waiver of a porch or stoop requirement for your front entrance. E is the garage requirement. F is to allow 100% vinyl as a major material on the front facade. This has come up before. Vinyl is an okay material. The standards do require for a house in the front that only 65% of it be covered. There are other ways to get around that, which includes providing a porch of a certain size and other architectural detail. In this case, we weren't able to work with the applicant to find an alternative means. The proposal, they left the proposal as submitted. G is waiver of the street tree requirement, so no street trees are proposed. 2 would typically be required. And then H is that sidewalk requirement. This is the subject property on the east side of the street. You can see it kind of has a little bit of a leg. There is a existing garage building that would come out, be demolished. It's actually located in the way of where the building would go. Just another view. This is a house. I believe this one's to the north. It's a manufactured home too, but it is oriented towards the street. Just some more photographs showing context of the house styles and character of the area. Just a street view. This is the site sketch provided by the applicant. So you can see the 30-foot frontage of the building, a driveway off the street running to the south. They did identify where they'd put a garage in the future, here to the south. This is the floor plan. We often don't get into the detail of the floor plan with you, but in this case, we don't have an actual front. I guess this is technically the front facade, and we don't have an elevation of that to show you. So in order to demonstrate to you the character or what it looked like, we thought it was important to show you the floor plan. So there would be a door oriented towards the street, but there would be no windows. This is an elevation provided by the applicant of the side facade, which is really, as it's designed, and functions that would, as you would buy this is really the, excuse me. Anyway, this would be the side facade, but it's really the building's front from a character standpoint. Rendering. When we evaluate the garage requirement, we do look at it to see whether or not it fits into the criteria of something that we could approve with a type 1 design alternative. And just refresh everybody's memory, that kicks in that 50% threshold. Are we 50% or more of the properties in the surrounding 250 feet area? Do they have a garage? And in this case, 69% do. And so that's represented by the green triangles, with the red triangles being the properties without garage. So we could not approve it as a type 1 just to do a shed. And we're not going to support waiving it if we can't do it as a type 1, because we feel that criteria is there for a reason. I can come back to this. This is the narrative from the applicant, and when they present, I'm more than happy to flip back to it, but provide some of their rationale for their proposal. You got a copy of the staff report in the packet. As always, it includes the criteria, the design review, or excuse me, the review criteria for design alternatives. Let me flip to the staff recommendation. In short, we are recommending denial of all the requests. That includes everything that pertains to the design of the building or the house, the request to waive the garage requirement, and the request to waive the sidewalk requirement. This is the response map. And I'm happy to answer any questions. We can go back to pictures, drawings, whatever would be helpful for the commission.
Any questions for Jason? If not, we could proceed to the applicant's presentation. Is the applicant with us tonight, Jason? Do you
know? He dropped off, but there he is. Justin, if you can unmute yourself, go ahead and introduce yourself to the commission.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Justin Raymond. I live at 4235 Southeast 17th Street, and thank you for having me. So I'm requesting a type 1 design for the first 3 items in the 6th item as the best placement for the house on the irregularly shaped lot, as others have done in the neighborhood. To put the house with the 56-foot side facing the street, there would be not enough room for the requirements for both sides of property line, the house, a porch off the side of the side door, a sidewalk with driveway. This being the case is the reason I am applying to put the house with the 30-foot side facing the street, as others in the neighborhood have. The 4th alternative is to put in a walk-in porch, as many in the neighborhood have. The 5th is to waive the garage requirement. For now, there is in the future where we could put a garage. In the statement, hold on. In the statement from planning and zoning staff, the house to the west and the houses directly across the street have a garage meeting or exceeding the minimum or code requirement. As the west is across the street, I am not sure what is being referred, but the house to the left, if facing the street, is situated on the property in the same manner as the request. The primary door faces the south, and there is no door on the street facing side. There is no garage. There is a structure considered as a storage area or shed. It cannot fit a car. The house on the other side of that has 2 garages, one in front of the other, and directly on the other side are 2 sets of 4 residential family duplexes. The house to the right of facing the street is a manufactured home. It does not have a garage. Of the 3 houses across the street, 2 have garages. The last requirement is regarding the sidewalk. The statement from the planning and zoning staff report, the grade contours along Wade Street would allow for a sidewalk to be constructed in this area. There is no Wade Street in this area. Southeast 17th Street runs north-south, which is a part of the Circle neighborhood. It runs from Leach, east to west, to Emma, east to west, east to west. The street does not lead directly to Indianola Avenue. A turn has to be made off of Leach onto Southeast 16th Court or turn onto Emma. turn again on Southeast 17th Court to get to Southeast 17th Street to Indianola. There are no curbs or gutters on any of the streets in the Circle neighborhood. There is not one property with a sidewalk. In the matter of whether this is negatively affect the neighborhood as it is an improvement from the existing, I would say exactly opposite. Thank you.
Are there any questions for the applicant at this time? If not, is there anyone else who wishes to speak in support of this request?
There's Dana Raymond. If you want to go ahead and unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. My name is Dana Raymond. I live at 4235 Southeast 17th Street. I am here with Susan Neal, who lives at 4175 Southeast 17th Street. Both of these properties are on either side of the property being proposed for construction. I am in total support of this project. It is only more valuable than what's already existing. It's only going to raise the value of other houses in this area. It's not going to harm anything. This is an old neighborhood. So to put a $500,000 house here is going to be really out of place and lower the value of that house just because of what's around it. And I don't think that's a fair burden.
Yes, my name is Susan Neal. I do live at 4175 Southeast 17th Street. My whole concern is I'm supporting this 100%. I have lived in this area my whole life. I was born in this area. It has become an old neighborhood. Lately, it is beginning to be rejuvenated. We're getting young people like the applicant. They're going to have families. They're going to support our school. They're going to support taxes. To put a sidewalk in out here almost very regularly. We have culverts. We wouldn't be able to have sidewalks. I walked to school. My children walk to school because I raise my children out here. Sidewalks are just not a viable option. And I think we need to look at the fact that we need to support young people in home ownership and make it affordable, especially when they're only trying to make the neighborhood better. This neighborhood has improved vastly, and the requirements that you're making haven't been on the new houses that have been built within the last 10 years. It's all of a sudden now you're wanting more and more and more, and you're just outpricing the neighborhood, and it's not fair to the new applicants. I appreciate your time, and I hope that you look at the value that this could bring to our neighborhood, our city, and our school system by the taxes and the overall values that it could bring to everybody out here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in support? You see any hands?
Not seeing any, Chair.
Okay. Is there anyone who would like to speak in opposition to the request?
Not seeing any either.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for city staff at this time before we close the public hearing? If not, we'll close the public hearing for commissioners to deliberate. And so commissioners, what are your thoughts?
Dory, this is Greg Jones. I'll try.
Greg?
It really seems like this might be okay, but it's not trying very hard to meet our standards. You know, so I'll just go through these. Part A, I really don't care if we're 30 or 35 feet, so I think we could be narrower. However, on Part B, there needs to be windows facing the street, period. The principal entrance needs to face the street. I realize neighbors might not, but I think that's a cue that somebody lives there. And I think if we're going to have a city that we want to live in, that's probably what we should do. I think so. The porch really should be on that street side. Part E, I really don't care if it has a garage, but I think that it should have a garage. I'm assuming this doesn't have a basement, so without a basement, it really should have a garage. Part F, again, that front side needs to have some creative stuff. If the whole thing's going to be vinyl, we should have some detail on it. Part G, we should have a street tree. And Part H is the one that I would allow no sidewalk because there isn't any around. So that's my thoughts.
Dory, this is Will Page, and I have a question I should have asked the applicant. My question is, are there other prefabricated homes that are available which would actually meet the city's requirements better?
Justin, if you can, Will has asked a question. If you can unmute yourself, you could address that if you'd like.
Yes.
Justin, Mr. Raymond, did you hear my question?
Yes, I did. This is the only one currently available for the situation with this floor plan.
Well, the floor plan isn't our question.
This is the floor plan that I wanted, and we discussed with the modular home people. And this is the only one.
This is Kayla Bergson. I wonder if I don't know if there's any opportunity to negotiate with the modular home supplier on adding an additional window to the bedroom that faces the street and maybe a window to the utility washer dryer room, I think is what I'm seeing there. That would at least start to kind of get you closer to meeting some of those transparency requirements. Do you know if there's any flexibility on the windows?
Yes, there is flexibility. We could move the one from the bedroom at the top over to the side. And we can put one in the laundry room if we need to.
Okay.
Thank you, Kayla. Any other comments or thoughts?
Madam Chair, I have a question for staff. This is thinking about potential alternatives. If this current layout were to flip, where the 56 feet are facing the street, would that meet setbacks and some of the requirements, or is that even an option that the applicant has considered?
Yeah, great question, Johnny. It would be tight. I might have to just double check really quick. I do believe we'd have some space left over for a driveway. I don't know off the top of my head if we would have to offer any sort of relief to setbacks. I want to double check that before committing one way or the other. Was there another part, anything else to your question?
Yeah, the follow-up was for, thanks, Jason. The follow-up was for the applicant as far as if he would be willing to, if obviously it met setbacks and whatnot, if he will be willing to flip that in order to meet some of these requirements.
Okay. I will, Justin, go ahead and answer that. It looks like you've unmuted yourself. So if you want to answer that, I will check the setbacks. And I do want to offer, I do know that from a transparency standpoint, what is on that facade, that would comply. We wouldn't need any relief.
Yes, we did at first try to put the 56 facing the street, but it will not fit with the driveway there and the porch. And the sidewalk from the driveway to the entrance of the building. Even with the setback, there's no way it was going to fit.
A porch? I'm not following where
Not like a porch, but like a normal step up with a crawl space. Because it's a crawl space modular home, so it would have to have some sort of way to get up into the to reach the house. So it would just be a normal, nothing, crazy. It would just be a normal into the house, step up porch.
Well, the stoop for the side entrance is what.
What's that?
I think this is Eric Lundy. I think he means the stoop for that side entrance into the laundry room. If you rotated it.
Yeah. There is a water pit and a sewer line on the neighbor's line on the property line.
Justin, does that side door, is that something that can be moved to like the back side of the house, like a rear door with the manufacturer or not?
No.
Madam Chair, this is Will Page. Sorry for interrupting the discussion, but there seem to be quite a few different issues involved in this. And perhaps they can be resolved and perhaps they cannot be resolved. But at this point of time, does it make sense to continue this item to another meeting when we could have something worked out between the applicant and the staff that's a little bit firmer than what we're seeing right now?
Can I speak real quick?
Yes, go ahead.
We've been going through this process for a very long time just to get on this meeting. So I would really not like to postpone it to another. I got financing. I just finished my loan. I got to get my process started somehow. And just putting it back another week is just going to delay me from getting it done.
If I could, Chair, this is Jason Vance, staff. Just quick math, that's 75 feet of width across and then 56 feet for the building. So that leaves you 19 feet. Divide that on the two, could do 5 feet on one side with the type 1. That'd leave 14 on the other side for, a driveway and steps. That could get a little tight. We could adjust that a little bit, maybe do 4 and whatnot. I will say that, I've consulted with staff that has worked with Justin. I've become involved more at the tail end here. And I do believe we've tried to offer some suggestions and ultimately Justin wanted to move forward with his proposal and bring that to you. So I want the commission to know that staff is willing to continue to work with him. We're happy to, if you can give us a little direction on what you're thinking, we can do that. I also respect that he has some timing issues.
This is Dory Briles, the chair. I was wondering, what is the opposition to planting the trees? And where would they be located? Maybe Jason, you could point out where.
Sure. You could, depending on, I don't have the exact dimensions, but street trees would generally be in the right of way. So 1 or 2, it could be if we'd been able to continue discussions with the applicant, we might have been able to find, room to approve the lowering it down to one tree. I do see perhaps an obstacle here, but at this point, we've been advised that he'd like both of them waived, and so there really hasn't been an opportunity to fine tune anything. But I do think there's probably space. Maybe one of the trees is closer to the property line and one's closer to the, whether it's this property line or that property line, and then one perhaps in this area.
There is a, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. There is a fire hydrant and telephone pole in that front section, but we can put a tree there. It's just going to be tight between the two fire hydrant and light pole.
If there's an obstacle, staff is never opposed to reducing the number. So.
In order to keep this moving, this is Story Browse again. Greg had originally stated about adding some detail for the 100% vinyl siding. As the applicant, are you willing to add some architectural design elements to meet this requirement?
The house comes like that with vinyl siding. So and the house is what I have, like price wise. So I can't really make a whole, foot like all the way across deck, or it comes like that.
Justin, is there siding options, different packages for detail or trim?
No, this is exactly how it would be. There's no other options. This is how it comes. It comes vinyl all the way through. There's shutters that I can change colors, but nothing.
Okay. Well, I just meant from the vinyl siding, sometimes you can get in vinyl different, it'll look like it's a different style, but it's still vinyl. I didn't know if they had offered that as an option.
No.
Dory, this is Greg Jones. I don't know if we're at an impasse, but in the middle of the meeting, it seems like it's difficult to negotiate all of this stuff. I don't know if he wants a motion, because if I make a motion, it's going to be for denial of most of the things. So Jason, if that's the case, then what happens to Justin's request?
Oh, go ahead, Greg. Sorry.
If we turn it down, what happens?
Well, it would happen it'd be the same with any application. If the commission's action is not something the applicant is willing or can have addressed the issues, then the project wouldn't move forward. The relief, any of the relief granted would be there available if they are able to find some alternative ways of doing their project.
This is Gian, and my question, Jason, is I know that he's, Mr. Raymond's, I know time is important, but would he be better off? Are we helping him more if we continue this, or should we make a motion and it might not pass,
Well, I think from actually finding a solution, I would recommend you continue it. But I'm not going to speak for the applicant if the timing is more important than ensuring approval. That's his choice. I can't make that for him.
Well, I would recommend continuance.
Can I speak real quick?
Yes, go ahead.
I will go with continuing if progress can be can be made. I can do, street trees. I can do windows. And it's not about really the time. It's just that I've been emailing back and forth and I wait for emails for a month or this and that. We had asked for a virtual meeting and we were declined. And we tried to get on previous meeting and we did not get that one either.
My expectation to be that the commission, they're going to continue it. If they continue it, it's to a specific meeting. So the next meeting would be on the 18th. It's probably challenging to meet next. We'd have to meet early in the week, Monday or Tuesday, to be able to have some changes. I'm a little concerned that we wouldn't, even if we all were 100% on the same page. I'm concerned that we don't have, 1 week isn't enough time, especially if we need information back from the manufacturer. So the meeting after that would be the 1st of April.
Jan, this is Greg Jones.
Yes.
Not that I don't agree that continuing makes sense. However, I think Justin needs some direction about what we're expecting. And what I'm expecting is not just put some windows on the wrong side of the building and still have it oriented wrong. I'm expecting that the building be oriented to the front seat. And so my motion would be to allow the denial of A, but B, C, D, E, F would be denials still. And then we could allow 1 tree for G and waive the sidewalk. That's what I'd be expecting, but I don't know how we're going to tell him that unless we have some kind of vote.
Well, I hear what you're saying. I'm just thinking that he seems very willing to work with staff if he could get, some time with staff. So,
but working with staff on half those things, to me, is not going to cut it. So we either need to tell him yes or no today, or give him the direction that he needs to head toward.
Okay, I'd really like him to have direction and then continue it. But what do others think? I really appreciate that, Greg. Thank you.
I go along with what you say, Jan. This is Will Page here, and I would move continuing the applicant's application until the April 1st meeting of the Plan and Zoning Commission, and asking staff to take very seriously into consideration Greg Jones's recommendation and Greg Jones's concerns for the property.
Yeah, excellent. I agree with that.
Thank you. Well, is there any other discussion, commissioners? We do have a motion. If no more discussion, we'll call for the vote.
All right, Jan Freed?
Yes. And we're voting to continue, correct?
That is correct.
Yes. Yes. Thank you.
Kayla Bergson?
Yes.
Lisa Howard?
Yes.
Carolyn Jennison?
Yes.
Francis Bogus?
Yes.
Greg Jones?
Yes.
Abby Chungeth?
Yes.
Rocky Sposato?
Yes.
Will Page?
Yes.
Johnny Alcivar?
Yes.
And Dory Briles?
Yes.
So motion to continue to April 1st meeting passes 11-0.
Thank you, Tyler. We are now ready for item number 7, a request from Laura Raymer for property at 5719 Harwood Drive to allow construction of an attached garage and rear addition to the existing house. And I believe who will be presenting this item?
Good evening, everyone. This is Anu Minhas. I'm a planner with the City Development Services Division. And this is my first time presenting in the virtual format, so please bear with me if there are any issues and let me know if you have trouble with the screen. This item again is a request for waiver of a public sidewalk through a type 2 design alternative. The property is located at 5719 Harwood Drive in the Waterbury neighborhood. It is located along the north side of Harwood Drive. You have 56th Street to the east and Highway 235 to the north to give you a little more context of the site. It's not very visible in this particular location, but as we go down through the presentation, you'll be able to see there's a existing public sidewalk along the south side of Harwood Drive, but there is no sidewalk along the north. The applicant has proposed an addition with a living space to the rear and an attached garage to the west side of the existing building. The combined area of the addition exceeds 50% of the original building area, and the estimated cost of the addition also exceeds 50% of the assessed value of the existing building. Both of these factors trigger compliance for the entire site to meet the zoning code. The public sidewalk is a requirement and needs to be provided to comply with code. The applicant is requesting waiver of this public sidewalk. There are a few images to give you a visual of what the site looks like. This is the existing house. This is Harwood Drive looking east. As you can see, there's a sidewalk along the right side or the south side of Harwood Drive. This is another image of Harwood Drive looking west. The subject site is, if it's visible, there's a car parked right here. The subject site is right on the right-hand side. Again, there's a sidewalk all along the south side of Harwood. This final image is just a close-up of the site with the existing building and gives an idea of where the proposed sidewalk or the required sidewalk would need to go. So there is really no topographical sort of issues with it. There's a very mild, gentle slope going down east to west on Harwood. This is an applicant's, the applicant's letter making a case for their request, which basically I'm not going to go through all of it, but it's a two-page letter. It basically states the justification for asking for the relief, and the applicant is on the meeting, so I'm sure they'll make the case for it. But to give you briefly, they mentioned the absence of a sidewalk along Harwood Drive, and that it would not create an interconnected system even if they did provide a portion along the subject site. They also point to the presence of a sidewalk on the south side of, They also mention the presence of a sidewalk on the south side of Harwood, which would provide the necessary pedestrian connection and movement in the area. We did receive the applicant forwarded a few emails from neighbors. They came in a little late in the day, so they don't show up on the consent map that will follow, but I wanted to give you a quick visual. We've received 3 emails from neighbors. All three neighbors are in support of the applicant's request for the waiver. You've had the chance to look at the staff report. Staff analyzed the proposed addition and the requested relief against the requirements of the zoning code and how it fits in with the type 2 design alternative requirements. As has been discussed in some of the past cases, similar cases, one of the main driving factors for the staff's analysis and recommendation is that closing sidewalk gaps and creating the interconnected pedestrian system is a priority for the city's transportation plan. While there isn't a sidewalk along the north side of Harwood Drive, the goal must be achieved incrementally. The applicant also does not face a practical difficulty in constructing the sidewalk, and for those reasons, staff is recommending denial of the request. Here's the consent map. Again, as I mentioned earlier, the city received 3 emails from neighbors that are in support of the requested relief. I believe one of them is up here, the second one here, and the third one is in this southeast corner. That is all I have from the staff's presentation perspective. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have.
Thank you, Anu. Are there any questions? If not, is the applicant here to present?
I believe there are a few people who would like to.
Yeah, it looks like Laura, the applicant, if I'll give her permission to speak. Do you want to go ahead and unmute yourself? Laura, are you there? There we go.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please.
Sorry, it's still
That's okay.
coming up on my screen saying to unmute. Thank you guys for your time this evening. When I first bought this house in 2013, it was me, myself. Since then, I have adopted 2 children through the state of Iowa, and they are with me forever. So I functionally have a 2-bedroom home, and I would like to stay in my home here in Des Moines. I also own a small business that is just on the north side of the interstate from here, and own a building there as well. And so I'd like to stay local to that as a single mom as well. So I know I've got some neighbors on as well that can kind of attest to we have no sidewalks on our side. There's also, if you go north 1 street to Pleasant, there's newer construction as well there that also doesn't have sidewalks. If you go down to Ronwood, Ronwood has no sidewalks. If you go to 56th Street, the east side of it between the interstate and Woodlawn or Harwood going the other direction has no sidewalks. And so again, also in that letter, we talked about the cost because I have a long road area as well. It would be a huge sidewalk that goes nowhere. So we would love, sorry, we would love, the whole thing out. Thank you, buddy. Do you want to come into our room? Hold on 1 second. I'm so sorry for this. Come here. We would love your consideration of that variance. So. And this one I mean. Shh. I'm going to go ahead and mute myself again. Sorry.
No worries.
Mom is not mad. I'm trying.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak in support of the applicant's request?
There's a James. Go ahead.
Yes, hi, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Great. I'm James Cronin. I live directly east of Laura and her family. And we have a sidewalk, as was pointed out. It's a perfectly functioning sidewalk. There's not that much traffic here that really requires a second sidewalk. And really, aesthetically, it would look really funky on such a beautiful street and such a wonderful neighborhood to have, 75 to 100 feet of sidewalk that won't be used. And as a matter of fact, I I'd be willing to wager a bet that you'll replace that sidewalk before we ever have a functioning sidewalk on the north side. So I would really hope that you folks could see things the way that they are, and that we're doing just fine here on Harwood Drive with the sidewalk that we have. It seems to be quite burdensome, and again, would hope that you would look favorably on Laura's request for a waiver. Thank you.
Next, we have Dean Baton.
Certainly. Again, I hope you can hear me. Yes?
Yes.
Great. I'm in favor of the waiver. And as much as I've listened this evening, I have high regard for the staff and their recommendations, but I would oppose their recommendation at this point. Just to give you a bit of a perspective, Harwood Drive at this point, from the 56th Street west to the bottom of the street, where it's Cummings Parkway, there are 13 homes. There's approximately 1,123 linear feet, and that represents almost a quarter mile. On that north side of the street, there is not a sidewalk. On the south side of the street, there is a sidewalk. And most of these homes were built in the 40s, and thus, for 80 years, we've been able to get by without a sidewalk on the north side of the street. Laura maintains an extremely nice home. It's a Cape Cod. She would agree. I think most of us would agree that she needed to replace her garage, and I am extremely glad that she has chosen to do that. I'm very glad that as a single mother and having adopted 2 children, that she is also looking to expand her house. That's going to help our entire neighborhood, if you will. And the burden of adding a sidewalk in front of her house, 107 feet of sidewalk in a total of 1,123 feet, makes no sense, in my opinion. And I think it would be a waste of her money and certainly unnecessary. Laura maintains the house very nicely, and we're very pleased that she's improving the neighborhood and improving her house, and it's going to add value to all of us. And if you will, to be very practical, add additional property tax revenue to the city of Des Moines. I certainly understand the sidewalk gap ordinance that the city has passed. And if we had 12 houses that had sidewalks in front of them and 1 house that did not, I would be all in favor of forcing that property owner to put a sidewalk in. But in this case, we have 13 houses, 1,100 feet that have no sidewalks. And I think it just seems a little ridiculous that we would ask Laura to put a sidewalk in front of her house. So I'm asking that you, as commissioners, apply the same logic and basically approve the waiver that she's requesting. And I hate to say go against the staff recommendation, but I do have to think that this would be a good vote in your favor. And as a property owner and living on this street for 41 years, I am all in favor of what she's doing, and I'm in favor of the waiver. And I hope you vote in her favor or in favor of the waiver. I appreciate it. I'm at 5707 Harwood Drive. And again, we've been there since 1980. Love the place, love Des Moines, and I appreciate the time that you've given me.
Pay your property taxes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers?
Yeah, we have a couple more. Neil, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Following that up is going to be pretty tough. He did a pretty exquisite job. I'm the contractor. I've been doing this since I was 18. I'm 35, so 17 years. This process has been pretty tough with the new building code and the amount of things we had to do, but it is a big project, and I can respect and appreciate that we had to make sure we got it right. And I really feel like we did. This is just kind of the last piece. We are making substantial improvement to the property, and it will raise the property values around it, as he mentioned. However, adding a sidewalk when no others exist on the north side of Harwood is very perplexing to me. Also, a vast majority of properties in the surrounding area have no sidewalks on either side of the road. Moreover, there are multiple new construction houses straight north on Pleasant Street that have no sidewalks as well. Throughout various conversations about this project and applying for the variance, I was told that other people in similar circumstances had their variances approved. Lastly, I don't see any adverse effect to the community by not putting a sidewalk that leads to nowhere. However, if the city is going to mandate that everybody on the north side of Harwood Drive puts a sidewalk in, then we would happily do it, because then it wouldn't be useless. That's pretty much all I have.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Please state your name and address.
Chung, unmute yourself, please.
Yes, this is Chung Chan at 5825 Harwood. I'm in support of granting the waiver. I live on the same side of the street as Laura, and like Dean and James and Neil has said, that there is no sidewalk on this side, and really adding just a small section of it will not be filling in any gap at all. But most of what I wanted to say has already been spoken. I do want to also compliment the Laura and her contractor. I appreciated the fact that the new garage followed the characters of the other neighbors' houses by not protruding beyond the main house, and looks like from the drawing is set back, and that's not a typical way of how houses are built nowadays. And so I really appreciated that point. So.
Lastly, we have a phone number. It's 515-991-7274. You can unmute yourself with, was it *6? Is that right? Or is it *9?
*6 is to unmute.
Hi, this is Kimberly Cotchell. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. So I live across the street from Laura, and I also support the waiver of the sidewalk. I just think aesthetically it would not look appealing, and I think all of my fabulous neighbors have done a great job in articulating why that is. So another support, Laura.
Thank you. Jason, anybody else that you see that would like to speak?
I did have one more hand that's popped up. Marilyn Carroll. Go ahead and unmute yourself, please. There you go.
Okay, that's done. My name is Marilyn Carroll, and I live right next door to Laura at 5725. And I would like to join the list of my neighbors who are in support of the waiver for this sidewalk. It would really look pretty ridiculous. Just to have the one stretch of sidewalk and the whole rest of the north side of the street having none. So again, I'm in support with the rest of the neighbors of granting the variance. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anybody who wishes to speak or speak in opposition, Jason?
I'm not seeing any more, Chair.
Okay. Do we have any other questions for staff at this time, commissioners? If not, we will close the public hearing, and it's time for the commission to discuss.
This is Lisa. I have a question for staff.
Yes, Lisa.
The sidewalks across the street, when were those put in, and were the individual owners required to pay for them?
That is something I might not have an answer for. Jason, do you know?
Yeah, I don't know that we know that information. Can you go to your picture of that sidewalk so we just maybe get a sense of how old it looks? That might just let us know, generally when it was installed. But I'm not going to be able to, unless somebody else, and if a neighbor happens to know if that was a city project or if the applicants were put in, they could go ahead and raise their hand if they'd like. But I don't know that we will be able to find that out today.
Okay, thanks.
I do see a hand raise. It's up to the chair if you'd like me to allow them to speak to see if they know the answer to that or not.
Yes, please.
If we could have a quick answer, that would be great.
All right, Chung, go ahead.
This is Chung Chan at 5825 Harwood. I don't know the exact original date, but I was part of the Waterbury Neighborhood Revitalization Committee back in 2006, 2007. And I do know that the one part of the funding went to replacement of sidewalk that went into some of it, I think, benefited my neighbors along the street.
So that sounds like we used to have what we called the Neighborhood Infrastructure Repair Program, or NERP, that we would partner with our neighborhood planning efforts. And that was a repair activity. So there may have been sidewalk already there that we repaired. But
that is correct. Yep. There was sidewalk there already at the time, and we went in and repaired some of the one that fell out of conformance.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other comments, commissioners?
Well, Dory, this is Jan. I'm a big believer in sidewalks, but I think in this case, since there is a sidewalk on the south side all the way down, and this would be the only one on the north side, I would make a motion to waive the sidewalk.
Okay, commissioners, is there any other additional discussion? If not, we'll call for the vote.
Caleb Bergson?
Yes.
Lisa Howard?
Yes.
Carolyn Jennison?
Yes.
Francis Bogus?
Yes.
Greg Jones?
Yes.
Abby Chungeth?
Yes.
Rocky Spazzato?
Yes.
Will Page?
Yes.
Johnny Alcivar?
No.
Dory Briles?
Yes.
And Jan Freed?
Yes.
Motion carries 10-1.
Thank you, Tyler. And we're now ready for item number 8, the final item on the agenda. It's a request from R.M. Madden Construction, Inc., represented by Michael Madden, for property located at 1124 Wade Street. And I believe Kyle was going to present.
Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the Commission. Kyle Larson, member of City Planning staff. I'll be presenting the last item on this evening's agenda. It comes from Madden Construction. They're seeking two type 2 design alternatives as they prepare to construct a single-family dwelling at 1124 Wade. Item A is to waive the garage requirement that comes with a type C house. As you'll see here, item B has been struck. Staff did take a look at the existing site conditions and constraints and felt that it was appropriate to grant the type 1 design alternative to allow one less street tree than the 2 required by code. And then item C is the applicant is seeking waiver of the sidewalk requirement. There's an aerial view to give you some context of the neighborhood. Wade Street is located on the far south side of Des Moines, south of Army Post Road. If you look closely, you will see from the aerial that there is no public sidewalk on either side of Wade Street between Southwest 11th and Southwest 13th. The closest sidewalk that we have here is on the south side of Amos Avenue, 1 block south of the subject property. This is a site photo of the existing vacant lot. You can see in the distance here an existing storage shed, 12 by 16 in size, that the applicant is considering to keep and renovate. There's also an existing overstory tree in the front yard that will remain. To give you some more context of the neighborhood, these are the 2 homes that are located directly east of the subject property. And these are the 2 homes located directly west of the subject property on the south side of Wade. These 2 homes are located directly north of the subject property across the street. Here's a street view looking east on Wade. And lastly, a street view looking west on Wade. And as you can see, there are no sidewalk on either side. Here is the site plan provided by the applicant with their building permit application. It does indicate the 1 street tree that I had mentioned that staff has granted type 1 design alternative relief for. Because of the existing overhead lines, it will be an understory tree. You can also see that the site plan is lacking the garage, but as a condition of no garage, the applicant is proposing to renovate the existing 12 by 16 shed here located on the south side of the property. Madden Construction is proposing to construct their Weston plan. You can see the front elevation as well as the rear and side elevations here on their building plans. As part of the design review, we do the garage calculation and look at the surrounding property, the 250 feet buffer around the subject property. The properties that do have a garage are represented in the green triangles, and the properties that do not have a garage are represented by the red triangles. Our calculation is that 63 or almost 2/3 of the properties within the buffer area do have a garage. This is over the 50% threshold requirement by code, which triggers the garage requirement. I can come back to this. This is the applicant's narrative that they provided. I will point out that it does have a photo of the existing shed prior to any renovation work. As with all the items, you're provided a staff report and recommendation that provides some background and staff rationale on our staff recommendation, cites the appropriate code sections. In closing here, our staff recommendation in Part A is to recommend denial of waiver of the garage requirement. And Part C, to recommend denial of the waiver of the sidewalk requirement. This is the consent map. We did not receive any comment cards. With that, I will turn it back to the commission for any questions.
This is Will Page. Kyle, I have a quick one. Does this building have a basement?
Yes, it does. It has a full basement.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Kyle? If not, we will hear from the applicant.
Michael, if you want to go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hey, good evening, Madam Chair, members of the commission. Kyle, thanks for the intro. Well, I will start with the garage requirement. It was a pretty close percentage here. And like we've done with previous properties, we will put a garage on certain properties if we see it fit, either with the lot itself or with existing neighborhoods, and getting the appraisal to work. This was kind of unique with the shed being on the property already. We figured we would leave that and redo the siding, make sure it's structurally sound, put a new service door on there, just spruce it up. It is larger than the required size of shed if we were to waive the garage requirement. Also, if you were to go to the site plan, there is still plenty of room for a future homeowner to build a garage and kind of develop a little bit of equity in the property itself, which we always try to do. And as of recently, I'm sure most people are aware, but with construction costs rising, it is getting extremely hard to build affordable houses in Des Moines. And with the more requirements on top of that, it's becoming increasingly difficult. So we see that leaving the space for somebody to build a garage and keep that price down a little bit, and just redoing the shed, we felt was adequate for that requirement. As for the sidewalk requirement, between Southwest 11th and Southwest 13th, there is no sidewalk on any property on either side of the street. And then along the west property line, there is a bit of an elevation change because there is a line of trees and scrubs on that west side where it kind of acts as a retaining wall for the neighbor's driveway. And that creates a bit of a dilemma in doing a sidewalk up to the property line. To make it work functionally, you'd have to, unfortunately, build a retaining wall, which with a 5-foot sidewalk spanning 55 or 65 feet and a retaining wall, you're going to stack another $3,000 on top of the already high price of this house for the neighborhood. So we felt like it was adequate to request the waiver of that. So I guess if there are any questions, I'm open to hear them.
Commissioners, do you have any questions for the applicant? If we have no questions at this time, are there any other speakers who wish to speak in support of the applicant?
Not seeing any hands raised.
Thank you, Jason. Anyone who wishes to speak in opposition? Not. If we have no further questions for the staff at this time, we can close the public hearing. And commissioners, what are your thoughts?
This is Francis Boggett speaking. I think that I would grant the waiver from both conditions. One, because of the lack of sidewalks in the general neighborhood, so there's no point in putting in one when having dozens of not having sidewalks. And with the basement, I would grant the waiver regarding the garage, since I think that and the shed would alleviate the need for a garage and keep the costs down and have affordable housing. So my motion is accept the waiver on both A and B.
Thank you, Francis. Any other comments from commissioners? Going once, going twice. If there are no other comments, I guess we will take the vote.
Okay, Lisa Howard.
Yes.
Carolyn Jennison. Carolyn. Thank you. Francis Bogus.
Yes.
Greg Jones.
Yes.
Abby Chungus.
Yes.
Rocky Spizzato.
Yes.
Will Page.
Yes.
Johnny Alcivar.
I will be a yes to A and a no to C.
Okay. And Dory Briles.
Yes.
Jan Freed.
Yes.
And Kayla Berkson.
Yes.
So motion to approve the waiver Part A passes 11-0, and then the motion to approve the waiver on Part C would pass 10-1, or excuse me, 10-1.
Thank you, Tyler. Again, I want to thank Jason for bringing us up to date that there has been some activity on sidewalk and subcommittee for that. Are there any other committee or directors reports this evening?
Chair, members of the commission, I do not have anything to report additionally for the director's report.
If not, is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll move. Dory, Jan.
Thank you, Jan.
All right. Goodbye, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
Thank you. Thank you, staff.
Good night.
Healthy.